Thank you so much. It's another wonderful Sunday evening. Thank you for joining us on another edition of African News. African News, where we'll bring to you major news, especially around Africa. And today we will be starting with South Africa. Democratic Alliance has withdrawn from South African coalition government, which has just marked its first anniversary. Tension started when President Cyril Ramaphosa fired a deputy minister from the Democratic Alliance over unauthorized travel. Andrew Whitefield, who served as deputy minister for trade, made a trip to the United States without approval from the presidency, contravening rules governing ministers. The DA responded by asking Ramaphosa to fire 3 African National Congress ministers facing corruption allegations in 48 hours or face consequences. South Africa's presidency dismissed the DA's call as threats and ultimatums that would not bother the president. Following last year's general election, where Ramaphosa's ANC lost its parliamentary majority for the first time in 3 decades, it was forced to team up with the DA to form a governing coalition. The 2 parties, however, maintain sharp ideological differences. Over the past year, they have clashed over the budget and policies to empower South Africa's black majority. Moving to Sudan, the sanctions, which include restrictions on U.S. exports, arms sales, and financial assistance to Sudan, will stay in place for last a year. Only humanitarian assistance will not be affected by the sanctions. Sudan's Army Leader General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his former deputy and the Rapid Support Forces (RSF) Chief Mohamed Dagalo are already sanctioned by the U.S. The latest embargo was prompted by allegations of chemical weapons used by Sudan's military in operations against RSF fighters. In January, according to report, government soldiers deployed chlorine gas known to cause severe respiratory pain and death in military operations. Sudanese officials denied the accusation. Our power struggle between Sudan's army rulers in 2023 plunged the country into a brutal civil war, which has killed tens of thousands. The conflict has displaced 13 million people, creating what the United Nations described as the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The agreement signed between DRC and Rwanda has been touted by many as a major step towards ending years of war in Congo's east. The United States, which brokered the deal, got involved after Kinshasa proposed a minerals for security offer. Analyzing the situation, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Pretoria, Dr. Samuel Iba, says mineral wealth was just one of the many drivers of conflict in the region and not the only one. One of those groups is Rwanda-backed M23, with which Congo is holding separate talks mediated by Qatar.
Parties like the U.S. have owned mines before in the eastern DRC. Of course, during the Obama administration, they sold some of these mines to China, which owns a lot of mines in the eastern DRC. And parties to the conflict till this day are still very focused on their interest in these mineral resources. There's a disconnect between the high-level peace building, the ones we see on TV, the Qatar process, the AU-led Luanda-Angola process. These peace processes have not led to any tangible agreement for over 30 years that this conflict has gone on, and we are seeing that there's a gap, that these two high-level peace building and the grassroots peace building are not connecting.
With Sudan in the grip of war and millions struggling to find enough to eat, many are turning to weeds and wild plants to quench their pangs of hunger. They boiled the plant in water with salt because simply there was nothing else. After 2 years of conflict, 24.6 million people in Sudan face acute food insecurity, nearly half of the population, according to the Integrated Food Security Phase classification. Aid workers say the war spiked market prices, limited aid delivery, and shrunk agricultural lands in a country that was once a buried basket of the world. Sudan plunged into war in April 2023 when similar tensions between the Sudanese army and its viral paramilitary, the Rapid Support Forces, escalated to fighting in the capital Khartoum and spread across the country, killing over 20,000 people, displacing nearly 3 million people, and pushing many to the brink of famine in what aid workers deemed the world's largest hunger crisis. Sudanese Agriculture Minister Abu Bakr Bashir told journalists in April that there were no indicators of famine in the country, but there was shortage of food supplies in areas controlled by the paramilitary forces known as the RSF.
Really are in extreme need after 2 years of conflict, especially some of the areas that are just recently accessible. People need access to all kinds of basic services and basic items, including food. For eating leftover peanut waste. So in Arabic, it's called ombas, and it's basically what's left over after using peanuts to produce peanut oil. So it really is leftover food waste made out of peanut shells, which is usually used as animal fodder. And that's what those are the kind of extreme measures that people have been resorting to be able to survive. We've also received reports of people eating grass, people eating leaves.
The head of the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Bintou Keita, has told the Security Council that the signing by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Rwanda of the draft peace agreement is a major step towards the end of the conflict. Keita said she was encouraged by progress made to reach a political solution to the recurring circles of conflict in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and stressed that the MONUSCO continues to stand ready to support this effort sustained by the decision and the will of the Council.
This morning, Rwanda signed, with the mediation of the American administration and with the state of Qatar as a witness, the peace agreement between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. In that agreement, Rwanda commits to withdrawing unconditionally all of its troops from DRC's territory. We hope that this time the United States of America, responsible for mediation, will be able to impose sanctions on Rwanda commensurate with their misconduct if they again fail to comply.
And part of today's agreement is the provision for the parties to form a standing joint security coordination mechanism whose first order of business will be to oversee the implementation of the concept of operations for the neutralization of FDLR and the lifting of Rwanda's defensive measures as approved under the Rwanda process in November last year.
Sudan Foreign Council President General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has approved a 7-day humanitarian ceasefire in El Fasher, the capital of the northern Darfur, amid intensifying clashes between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary. The announcement follows a phone call between Burhan and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, during which Guterres called for a temporary truce to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid to civilian courts in the fighting. Since May 2010-2024, El Fasher has been escalating violence between the army and the RSF despite repeated international warnings. The city was considered a strategic gateway for humanitarian operations across Darfur's 5 states, and continued fighting threatens to deepen the humanitarian crisis. And still in Sudan, a landmark military court has officially begun proceedings in Wahal, capital of the Western Baham, to address serious misconduct by members of South Sudan's People's Defense Forces. The move is seen as a critical step in enforcing discipline, upholding justice, and rebuilding trust between security forces and the civilian population. General Stan Camilo Mombro, president of the SSDPDF General Court Martial, stressed the importance of accountability at all ranks. The court is set to hear 27 cases, including 15 related to serious crimes such as rape and murder. Civil society groups have welcomed the initiative, viewing it as a rare opportunity for justice in regions where local access remains limited.
And this accountability applies to everyone who has committed an offense. We begin with accountability. We're holding perpetrators accountable. They will behave according to government's rules. The court is set to hear 28 cases, including 15 related to serious crimes such as rape and murder. The task is to represent the victim from the start of the proceedings to the final verdict. You also provide them with legal protection, as they might be fearful of speaking out or that something might happen to them afterwards. Accountable.
And lastly, this evening, the Central African Republic has declared 3 days of mourning after an explosion and the stampede that followed killed at least 29 school children and injured more than 250 at a high school in the capital city, Bangui. Prime Minister Felix Moulin visited the hospital with the injured students to assess the condition. The incident left parents shocked as they sought answers. When they have most of the victims, including 16 girls, died at the scene after the explosion resulted in a stampede, while others were confirmed dead at the hospital. The Minister of Health said on a statement at least 260 students were injured and being treated in various hospitals.
The police called me and told me to come quickly to the community hospital because my daughter was there. She is among the victims from the Barthélemy Boganda High School. That's how I came to the hospital. At this health center, she was in critical condition and we had to transfer her here. When you have a child, you raise them to a certain age and you have to support their schooling because they are your future. From yesterday until today, we have been on our feet. Yesterday was the worst. We managed to stabilize the situation with the arrival of security. We received 85 patients who were victims of yesterday's events at Barthélemy Boganda High School, 65 in emergency, 10 in gynecology, and 10 in traumatology. We regrettably had 15 deaths, young girls, 2 pregnant women, and 2 boys.
That's how far we can go this evening. Thank you so much for being part of the program. We'll see you again next week Sunday for another edition of the program, The African News. My name is Tosin Lowo. Do have a wonderful evening.